All right, and I already see folks who have registered and they are ready to go. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to wait just about a minute to give everybody a chance to filter in before we get going. Really appreciate you taking your lunch hour to spend with us. Wow, and I love how many keen guests we have already on the line. That is absolutely wonderful. Okay. Well, in the interest of not penalizing the punctual and keeping us on time today, I am going to kick things off. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Lunch and Learn webinar. My name is Shayna Furlong. I'm the president and CEO of the Richmond Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to acknowledge that the Richmond Chamber operates on the traditional territory of the Musqueam First Nation. They have lived on this land for millennia, and I am very grateful that we can gather here virtually today. And I'd also like to acknowledge all of the traditional territories you may be joining us from today. So before we get going, I have some housekeeping items for you. So as you will see, you are on mute, your camera is off. However, we are encouraging your questions. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a button that says Q&A. So please click on there to submit any questions you might have for Ray throughout the presentation. We will get through as many questions as we can before 1 p.m. If you run into any technical problems during the webinar and you need to let our presenter Ray or I know about anything you're experiencing, feel free to reach out through the chat as well. So now that our housekeeping is out of the way, it's time to introduce our presenter, someone many of you will already know well, Ray Wang. Ray is the founder of RW Digital. Founded in 2019, RW Digital is an independent digital agency based in Richmond, BC. The agency's mission is to help businesses use web technology, digital advertising, and data analytics to promote their brand and gain more clients in today's ever-changing digital space. RW Digital has worked with established brands such as Anthem Properties, Richmond School District 38, Auto West BMW, and much more. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to our presenter, Ray Wang.
Thank you for the introduction, Shayna. Thank you everybody for taking the lunch break to join us today to attend the webinar. I'm very excited to be here. So yeah, as you know, we'll be going over the basics of Google Analytics 4 today. This is just the overall agenda. So in the beginning, we'll just go over what is GA4 or Google Analytics 4, why advertisers use it, and then we'll go over some default tracking and reporting that GA4 is capable of that businesses can use for their own data analytics and marketing. So to start, so what is Google Analytics 4? So this is the latest Google Analytics version that Google rolled out a couple of years ago. So the previous version was Universal Analytics, and Google forcefully stopped Universal Analytics in July 1st, 2023, so last summer. So many businesses were essentially forced to hop on GA4 before the end of June 30th, 2023. And a major reason why GA4 was rolled out and essentially Google forced us to use GA4 was because GA4 was compliant with various data privacy policies, specifically in the European Union and California. So GA4, the way it collects data, it complies with European Union General Data Protection Regulation, as well as the California Consumer Privacy Act. Previously, with Universal Analytics, it wasn't. So that's why Google had to roll out GA4 to replace Universal Analytics. And why do people use GA4 or just Google Analytics as a whole? So in my opinion, there are two major reasons. One, GA4 or Google Analytics just simply offers a lot of different analytics products or features that advertisers or business owners can use to understand web analytics and even app analytics. Within GA4, you can create custom reports or for user journey, engagement, you can do a lot of additional tracking, like what people are clicking on and things like that, with GA4, and that becomes something that's very useful if you want to do any data analytics for your audience. And then another reason is that GA4 or Google Analytics as a whole acts as a centralized data hub for all your digital marketing. So you could be running YouTube ads, Facebook ads, SEO, and when people engage with ads and then go on your website, GA4 is able to collect data from all these different sources. And then you can basically go to GA4 and then you can see all the data from different sources and you can analyze this data and then you can see how different digital channels attribute to your sales performance or overall website performance. So this one analytics tool can become it's essentially one hub for all your data analytics needs. So we'll start with, now we're going to go in a little bit into GA4. So we'll go into the default tracking in GA4. So by default, GA4 offers one, two, three, four, I can't, seven measurements, types of measurement that it'll track automatically by default. And it's something that you don't really have to toggle or do. And then it's just something that it'll just automatically be, GA4 will automatically track this data and populate in your GA4 property. So the first one is page view. So it's pretty straightforward. So when a person visits on your website, GA4 will automatically track the the page view, the page title of the page, which page a person has visited. So that's the kind of the top thing that GA4 tracks. And this is I don't know if you guys can see well, but you cannot untoggle this. This is something that Google has to will track by default. Next is scroll. So by default, GA4 will also track how far down a user scrolls down a page. So it'll show you that if a person has scrolled down 10% or 90% of a web page. So if a user scrolls down 10%, that will count, like Google will track that as an event and it'll show that in your GA4 property. And then if a user scrolls down to the bottom of the page, to 90% section of the page, Google will also count that as an event. So all of this stuff basically gives you more metric, another dimension of how you can measure your website engagement. So for example, if you have you're driving traffic to a specific service page, you see a lot of page views, but you don't really, but people are not really converting on your website. So this scroll measurement gives you another dimension of how for you to understand whether or not users are actually reading the content on your site. You could be driving a lot of traffic, but people are not scrolling to the bottom of the page. So that could mean that the content is not entirely relevant to what users are looking for. So you can use this information to update the content of your site or other things that you can do to optimize performance. Next is outbound clicks. So if you have links to other sites on your page, Google can also track that. So for example, if you hyperlink an article, if you hyperlink your Instagram account, all these things, you can track that by default in GA4. So this is also very useful because you can kind of see what people are looking in addition to your own site. You can see what kind of content other people, like users, are interested in. If people are are interested in following your Instagram account and things like that. So this is also a very great way to track outbound link. And if you have so some companies, maybe they have a domain, but they have a nonprofit, let's just say they have a domain and then they could be using another a software for form submissions or volunteer application. So so if the form application is on a separate domain, so GA4 can track that, and then you can also use this information to see what people are actually interested in, and number of people have clicked on the form application. Next is site search. So if you have a search bar on your site and it's configured properly, Google GA4 can pick up which search term people are using on your website. So let's just say you're a car dealership and you have a search bar. You can use this information to see what kind of vehicles people are looking for. So it could be new car, used car, and things like that. So that can help you with your inventory purchase, essentially finding out what the demand is, what users are looking for. So that can kind of help you with the overall operation. And also if you want to do blog and content and other SEO work for your website, this site search is also a great way to find information that users are interested in and looking for. Next is form interaction. So by default, GA4 tracks, form interaction. So basically when somebody clicks, enter their name and email address in a form, and then try to submit a form application on your site, GA4 is able to count those interactions. However, this tool, based on our own projects and industry research, like this measurement is quite inaccurate. So for example, a person can fill in a form, but maybe they forget a field and then they press submit. So that form is invalid. They just say it doesn't go through. But for whatever reason, Google GA4 will still count that as a form submission. So which is inaccurate. So generally speaking, we disable this feature, and then we would set up form tracking in another way through Google Tag Manager. But that's a separate topic. But overall, we would just disable this feature. Video engagement. So if you have YouTube videos embedded on your website, Google can also track engagement for those videos. So by default, it's able to track like when a video starts, if a person has it's in process, and if it's complete. So again, it helps you basically understand people actually watching your videos on your website, if they're engaging, and then you can find out if you have multiple videos, you can see which kind of video users are interested in. So these are all kind of things that this video engagement measurement would offer. Lastly is file downloads. So if you have PDF files linked on your website, Google is able to track those PDF files. So if if you're like a real estate development company, you have brochures and things like that on your website, you can GA4 is able to track clicks to these files. So again, it's also kind of finding out user engagement. If these file clicks are quite important to your business, you can use that essentially to kind of understand overall website performance and like the performance of your ads campaigns. If your ad campaign is the goal is to drive more file downloads. In order for GA4 to track file downloads, like the file has to be under these formats. So PDF, doc, MP4, PowerPoint, etc. So these are kind of like the default file formats essentially that we all typically use. So as long as you have these kind of files added to your website, GA4 will be able to track these files automatically. So next, we'll move on to standard reports that are available in GA4. So first is reports snapshot. So so it is really exactly what it sounds like. It's a snapshot of your overall website performance. So there within the report snapshot section, there are various cards that you can actually add to see your overall website performance within a specific time frame. So for example, you can see the number of users who have been to your website, the number of active users who have been on your website, where users are coming from, like which countries users are coming from. So all this kind of information, you can add this to the reports snapshot section, which will give you a very quick glimpse of your overall website performance. And then as I mentioned previously, you can add more cards. So for example, if you're not happy with the default GA4 report snapshot report, you can add other things, for example, product revenue, like revenue for specific product, overall product revenue, like a product ID that people are buying, et cetera, et cetera. So you can build a lot of different things up with this. And then if there's something that you just want to build, like just so that you can kind of easily see your overall performance for specific metrics, you can add these cards to this report snapshot report. Next is real-time report. So this report shows you website performance or basically number of users in the last five minutes as well as the last 30 minutes. So the 30 minutes the 5 minutes is relatively new. Previously, it was just the last 30 minutes, but now Google has added 5 minutes. Overall, there's no real specific need. Like people don't really use real-time report overall, but if you're setting up, so for us, like we use it when we set up reporting or a customized event for GA4, then we to make sure that the new event or something we set up works, like we would look at the real-time report to do testing. But that's really kind of the only time we would use something like this. I don't know if people would just sit there and look at the real-time report. But yeah, so this is kind of what this report is for. Next is user acquisition report. So the user acquisition report shows you the number of people who've been to your website for the first time ever. So if somebody been to your website first time, like they see an ad and then they click on the ad and then visit the website for the first time, that data will be in this report. So this report typically just kind of helps you understand how you are acquiring users to your website. That's kind of like the only, if you're running a campaign like through, like they just said, there's a new media channel you're doing, a news ad, sorry, an ad on a industry publication that you never done before. You can use this kind of just to kind of see the number of users that publication has required for you, and the engagement from these users. But again, this is not typically used. Like typically what we would look at is actually just an overall traffic acquisition report. So this one is the one that people typically use, and this one gives you an overview of how users go to your website. So traffic acquisition is not it doesn't mean the first time. It's just whenever a person visits your site, GA4 will be able to pick that up, and you can do a lot more kind of secondary or segmentation for this. For example, you can see which source and medium people are using to your website, like if they've been to your website through a newsletter, and which newsletter they visited your page from, like could be from MailChimp and this and that. So even for organic, so for example, let's just say you want to see how much traffic you've been generated through SEO, you can do further dive in between like Google search, Google business profile, maybe you do some SEO on Bing. So these kind of things that this report would provide, and this is the kind of like the typical report that people use to look at traffic acquisition. Next is Google Ads campaign report. So you've been running Google Ads campaign, you can link it your Google Ads account with GA4, and then all the data from Google Ads will be synced and sent into GA4. So the good thing about this is that once you have linked the two accounts together, within GA4, you can use some of the built-in metrics and features that GA4 has to do more data analytics for your Google Ads traffic. Next is pages and screens report. So this one is essentially just which pages users are visiting to your website. This is also quite a popular report just because I think overall businesses and marketing teams want to see which pages users are visiting to their website, what they're interested in, and if there's any opportunity to improve results. So you may see that the website is gaining a lot of traffic to a specific product page or service page, but not many conversions. That's kind of the first step of kind of understanding there could be a bottleneck that needs to be improved. So this is kind of report that where we would find the information. Next is landing page report. So this is the report that users that shows the page that users land on when they visit your website. So let's just say if I visit richmondchamber.ca, richmondchamber.ca would be the landing page for my visit. So again, this is just another way to see, how people are finding your website, what people are doing. If there's a specific page that's getting a lot of landing page views or sessions, you want to double check to see that page is working properly. There's because that's kind of like the first impression for your website. So that's this report will give you this kind of information, and then once you have the information, you can do a lot with it. Again, like you can make sure the pages like specific landing pages are functioning well and presenting well. Next is e-commerce purchase report. So if you sync your GA4 property with your, like just say Shopify, WooCommerce, other popular e-commerce platforms, the e-commerce platform will send their sales data, basic product sales data into GA4, and then you can use GA4's default metrics and measurements to do data analytics for the sales performance, like how are people landing on your website to make a purchase, which digital channels they interacted before making a purchase, like did they click on a Facebook ad or Instagram ad before making a purchase. So all this kind of information helps you better understand your marketing efforts and how and then how you can allocate your budget more effectively, so it's more like your basically market is more cost efficient. And then just want to note that it's common to see 20 to 30% gap between the actual e-commerce sales data in the e-commerce platforms such as Shopify and the GA4 data. So there could be 10 sales in Shopify, but GA4 will only report 7. The reason is that it could just be a lot of time it's just to do with like privacy reasons. So they just say 30% of users block Google Ads, or sorry, Google Analytics on the browser. Then like their data will not be tracked, and Shopify won't be able to send that information into GA4 property. So this is quite common. And then so for us, like typically we're just looking at trends, not specific values. Like if you want to look at specific values, we want to look at into like the actual e-commerce platform. But if you want to just look at trends of a specific product or specific service, like you can just use GA4 to look at that. Next is checkout journey report. So this report is relatively new, maybe in the last like 3 to 4 months. Basically, it kind of shows you how users navigate through the checkout journey. So from the checkout process, add to shopping, add payment, and purchase. So you can kind of see how many people have begun their checkout process, and how many people have dropped from or not completing the entire purchase. So all this kind of information kind of helps if it's a really good like checkout process that driving people seamlessly through the checkout journey, or if like if you see a lot of dropout rate, then there could be opportunity to improve the checkout journey. Next is Search Console linking and reporting. So Search Console is a different tool. So basically it's a webmaster tool that gives you a lot of like SEO data. So which search terms people are using to land on your website, the average position on Google, your website ranks for search queries. So Google Search Console provides that kind of information, and you can sync that with your Google Analytics account. And then once the two accounts are linked, like you can do a lot of data analytics for the search terms, the search queries, using GA4's building metrics. So yeah, as mentioned before, GA4 really just acts as a centralized hub for a lot of your data analytics. And then if you do a lot of advertising through Google products, you can link all the different accounts with your GA4 property, and then you can do a lot of data analytics within your GA4 property. So next we'll move on to exploration reports. This is a new feature that's added to GA4, which weren't available to UA, Universal Analytics. So there are 4 types of exploration reports: freeform, funnel, path, and segment overlap. So the first one is freeform. This is essentially like a table graph. I don't know. Yeah. So this is like a table, and then you can create your own dimension and metrics. You can you would build this from scratch, or you can build from scratch, and then based on specific metrics and dimensions you want to see. So for example, you can create a table to see which pages your users are looking for. You can even take it a bit further. You can create another segment. For example, you can see the number of people from Richmond visited, like which pages people from Richmond have visited. And then you can compare with people from Vancouver or Burnaby or Toronto, and then you can do a lot more data comparison, other analysis for this free form report. So this is something that you generally cannot do in the standard reports that we mentioned previously. If you want to do a lot more segmentation and more in-depth comparison, you will need to use a free form report. Next is path exploration report. This is basically just showing how users are navigating through your website. So, and again, similar to the freeform, same as a freeform report, you can create additional segmentation for this report. You can create a segment just to see how people from Richmond are navigating through our website, how people from Vancouver, Toronto, or Calgary are navigating through our website. So again, it gives you more kind of like how people naturally navigate through a site, to see what people are interested in. So it's quite useful. Like if you want to, if you drive a lot of traffic but you don't see a lot of conversions, you can use it to see why people are not going from the page that they land on to they just making a purchase or submitting a form on your website. So you can use this to see to visually see how people navigate through your site. Next. Oh no, I skipped. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I skipped number 2. So the second one is called funnel report. So for this report, you can create your own funnel. So basically, step 1, step 2, step 3, I think it's up the way to step 5. And then you can see how people navigate through your website, and then you can see, or sorry, yes, through your website, and then you can see like different dimensions. So using this example, so we go from add to cart, add payment, and purchase. So you basically build a funnel for the checkout process. But you can take it a bit further. You can create a comparison for device category. So in this case, we have desktop, mobile, and tablet. So you can kind of compare how users on different devices are navigating through the checkout process. So if you find out that, maybe tablet is not performing as well as desktop, or mobile is not performing as well as tablet, then you can go into your website and then actually look at your site, how users navigate through different devices. Perhaps there's some bugs on the tablet version of website, or like it just, sometimes the text is like crammed, like it's, like you can't really see the buttons and things like that. So this information helps you understand how different devices or different segment or audiences navigate through specific steps on your website. You can even compare by countries or cities and see how people from different cities go through specific steps on your website. And then I went over this, and then next is segment overlap. I'm not too sure. So yeah, so it's like a Venn diagram. I personally don't know what's the use of this just yet, but maybe Google will educate us one day. It's a Venn diagram, and it's just showing an overlap of different segments. I can't speak too much about this one. I personally I have not used it too much, but it's available if you like to see circles in your charts. And yeah, so this is available. And next is key events and key events. So events can be, it's something that typically you would set up yourself, but there are certain events that are counted by default. So for example, if you sync your Shopify account with GA4, by default, GA4 account will consider events such as, when a user add a product to cart, add payment information, things like that, or when they made a purchase. So all these things are events. So basically, they're kind of like more specific actions, behavior interactions on your website. But so by default, there's some, but then there are other things, like for example, you want to track how many people click on the phone number on your website. So that would be an event. So that's something you would have to set up yourself. Next is key events. So key events are more important events that you specifically want to look at on your website. So things like, purchase, form submission, phone click, newsletter subscription, or like if you're like like if you're like a real estate developer, like you want to see how many people downloaded specific brochures and inquired about specific pre-sale properties and things like that. So those kind of things we will mark them as key events, and that's something that businesses will specifically look at to understand the overall website performance. Next is conversion path. So this is also a very cool and unique feature in GA4. So basically, it just shows you how users interact with different digital channels before converting on your website. For example, if you're doing SEO, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, TikTok ads, etc., etc. So a user they could interact with different channels before making a conversion on your website. So the conversion path report shows you how users interact with different reports. So it kind of helps you understand how digital channels are working together to, act like how to contribute to the final conversion on your website. It can also show you if a certain channel, like if you're running a campaign on a specific channel and nobody interacts with that before making a conversion, so that maybe you can decide whether it's worthwhile to even do digital marketing on a specific channel. So this report gives you a more holistic view of how the attribution of different channels in terms of driving sales and conversion on your website. Next is product linking. So as mentioned before, GA4 it's capable of linking various Google products. So the top one is actually typically is Google Ads. So if you have a Google Ads account, you can link it with your GA4 property, and then as mentioned before, you can start sending your Google Analytics data into GA4, and then you can do a lot of data analytics within GA4. Next is, again, we mentioned before, Google Search Console. You can also link it, and then a lot of the organic search data from Google Search Console will be sent to your GA4 property. Next is audiences. So this is also a new feature within GA4. So with audiences, you can build audiences basically based on specific conditions. So for example, you can build an audience of people who have made a purchase on your website, people who have not made a purchase on your website, they're visiting from a specific user from a specific city like Richmond or San Francisco. So once you build these audiences, you can do analytics and data analysis for that specific audience, and you can even compare the performance of one audience with another and to see if there's any difference. Like if it's like maybe you find out it's not worthwhile to market to a specific country because the engagement for that for that country or city is just too low compared to another, and it's better, and then it's more cost efficient for you to invest your ad dollars into targeting the audience that's actually performing well. So building this kind of audience gives you this kind of insights. So to build an audience, this is how you would do it. Basically, there are different conditions, and then within the condition, you can add a value. So let's just say we select the city condition, and then the value of this can be Richmond. So once you do this, then you'll build an audience for user who has been to users who are from Richmond based on the IP address. So and then going forward, once you have more data, like this audience, starts to populate. So I don't know, you can see their columns as users. So once you have more people visit like from that specific audience, meet the criteria, then this number starts to grow, and then yeah, you can do it data analytics. If you're also running Google Ads campaign, and then you have synced your Google Ads campaign with the GA4 property, you can actually serve ads specifically to people for specific audiences, basically. So for example, if you build an audience of people who have not purchased, you can serve a Google Ads to people who have not purchased on your website, and then you can make a special offer to these users who have not purchased. So this is kind of how advertisers or businesses would use this audience feature. And then lastly, limitation GA4. So the biggest bottleneck right now is really privacy kind of restrictions with data analytic as a whole. I think Canada is already not too bad because I don't think it's the banner is a cookie banner. I don't think it's absolutely necessary for Canadian businesses. But if they're, if you're marketing to the States or other parts of the world, and then with iPhone, like I think they scrape a lot of the data analytics from the browser. So a lot of time when somebody visits your website, it can be set as not set. Like it just Google GA4 is just not showing the data within your GA4 property. GA4, they're trying to use machine learning to really find out how people are using the website and then grant give as much data as possible. That said, like overall, GA4 is still a very useful tool, especially if you're doing digital advertising. Just because GA4 is, a centralized hub for all your data analytics. So that's even with this limitation, I think it's still a very effective tool. And overall, when we look at GA4 data, we're looking at trends, not specific numbers. So maybe like 2,000 sessions or 2,000 users may not actually be 2,000 users. But we're looking at trends. So maybe there's 2,000 this month and then 3,000 next month. And then 5,000 next month. So maybe the actual number is not entirely accurate, but we're just looking at trends to see, okay, overall, like we're getting more traffic to our website and things are moving on a positive trajectory. So that's kind of how we would use GA4 for website performance. So that is all for today. Hope everybody's still awake, and I'm happy to answer any Q&As.
Thank you so much, Ray. That was awesome. So I was writing down some questions as you were going. I also had our own GA4 account open so I could be looking at stuff as you were talking about it and seeing how it would map onto our experience. But I'd like to encourage everybody on the line to, if you had questions during Ray's presentation, you can type them into the Q&A section on your Zoom screen. So it says the little question mark icon and it should say Q&A right on the bottom of your screen. But we've got one now. So for the exploration reports, I found that I wasn't able to get user data for the past 93 days. Is there another way to increase the data range or is it limited?
Yeah, so by default, the data range is 2 months. I don't know why Google has done this. But you had to change it to 14 month. Like it's from Lena, so I can send her a screenshot after on where she can make the change. But by default, it's just 2 months. So yeah, so that's something we just have to change manually.
Okay, thank you so much. That's amazing. And Alina had another question. I'm sorry if I missed it during the presentation, but how can we find which outbound links were clicked on the website?
Uh, Generally speaking, you had to build an exploration report. So you would set outbound link as a dimension and the event count as a metric. Yeah, so Elena, I can send you a screenshot after as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Uh, and now, okay, so I have some questions. So Ray, you've been working in this space for a while. This is maybe a bit of a best practice question, but how often should SMEs be monitoring their analytics? Like how often should they be checking in?
Yeah, so mm, I think once a week it's quite important. So they can also build alerts. So we've seen cases where whatever reason, like the Google Analytics code gets removed from our site. So it's ideal to set up an alert when they just say your session becomes 0 for a day. That's typically a red flag. And then you will receive a notification to your email regarding this matter, and then you can check it. So that's kind of something that we recommend. But so that's something that we do. And then in terms of actually looking at data, I think once a week would be important, but it's not to do data analytics. It's just to make sure everything's running properly. That's kind of what we would do. Like 7 days of data is not really enough to do anything, but it really is to make sure everything's on track, especially you're running campaigns.
Okay, and so and also every time you change something or introduce a new ad, should be you be kind of checking in on it
Yeah,
weekly or
yeah.
periodically?
Yeah, so we do like once or twice a week, like
Okay.
typically. Yeah.
That's great. That's pretty easy to do. Now, for, a typical small and medium enterprise or maybe a nonprofit, what are the KPIs that you suggest that they be looking at as they start out with GA4?
I think for nonprofit, a lot of times they do donation, I think
Mm.
that's fair. Like charities, they do donation. Volunteer application, inquiries, phone call clicks. Those are kind of typical things that nonprofits or charities like we sing do. And like sometimes they'll do, yeah, like that, like if they do like obviously there's like lottery things, like we do lottery campaigns, so like tracking actual like lottery purchases and things like that. So that we see a lot of nonprofits and charities do, and then they just say like the recent golf tournament, they just say like obviously like registration would be like the top metric for measurement. So that's something that it's depending on the platform that it's used. Like there could be additional tracking needed to be set up in order to track registration. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's great. Thank you so much. So basically, like anything where you're looking to see a conversion, right, for someone to take action.
Yeah, so for us, like sometimes we would also look at like this additional tracking, but it's called like scroll depth is one. So I know we mentioned before it's like you see 10% or 90% of how far people scroll down a page. So but actually typically we would actually disable that and we will build an additional one. We can break it down to even more. So 10%, 20%, 10, 20, 50, 75, 100, and 90%. So you can even be more granular on how people use or how people like scroll down a page. We will actually set another thing called element visibility. So maybe there's specific section of page like you want to see, like just say like the button where you say like just say a vehicle page, or there's a call to action button. We will actually set up tracking to see how many people actually scroll all the way down to the contact us button. And then once you have that set it up, we can kind of see if people are actually scrolling there. If there are a lot of people scrolling to that part of the page but they're not inquiring, then there could be something, not wrong, but could be something that needs to be improved on the website. So there's other things that can be tracked through GA4.
That makes sense. Awesome. Oh, we've got another question. Um, Niven is doing some social media marketing in the next 2 weeks and is wondering, okay, I think he will be reaching out to you possibly, Ray,
Okay, sounds
to
good.
see if we can incorporate some of these tools in the next
That's
little
good.
bit. Um, Now, we have had some really great expertise from you today. Uh, do you know if Google themselves has any sort of on-the-ground support for users or training that they do as well for folks who might be doing it uh, themselves?
Yeah, there's like Skillshop that that you can kind of take courses that you can, yeah, but for us like it's a quite a steep learning curve.
Hmm.
It's kind of hard to do. Like so like for us, like we done like even the setup or GA4, we done over like 100 projects on this. So there's a lot of like learning for this. So I think there are like a lot of YouTube channels that you can search and learn, but yeah, like it takes quite a bit of time to and like projects to know more about like kind of the details of GA4.
That
But
is,
it's
yeah, I
yeah.
think that's probably fair.
Uh,
This is a level of expertise that you can't really gain in a weekend for sure. Um,
yeah.
Great question from Mary. When you do tracking or analytics, will you see exactly the name of the company searching on your website?
Uh like do you have it do you mind like what do you mean on this? Like if I work for Richmond Chamber and I search for something else and Google showed that I'm from Richmond Chamber, is that the question?
Yeah, Mary, would you be able to maybe provide a little bit more context? Do you mean like exactly the name that they searched to land up on your webpage, or exactly the name of the individual or the company who is searching? I know earlier when you were going over things, Ray, you showed us that report that was really good um, of searches, like the query search console page where you could see exactly what they were searching for to land
Yeah.
up where you are. Okay, and Mary says, yes, the company
No,
who is searching.
no, it's not because searches are tied with users, not with companies.
Awesome. Yeah, so you will see like the aggregate data, but not uh when you're on LinkedIn and you can see exactly who's been looking at your profile or your company profile and which company they're from.
Yeah,
It is not quite the same for Google.
correct. Yeah, there's like so data sometimes like they won't even show data unless it meets a certain threshold. So if one person search for inquiry like that one search will not even appear on Google GA4 because it doesn't meet enough threshold because it needs to be like anonymous data. So for example, if I send a unique link, let's just say you and only you open that link, your click will not like I won't even see the data in my GA4 property because that's becomes like I know it's you. So it's yeah, so I'm able to track data for that specific person. So GA4 it just won't let us do that right now. So data has to generally have to meet a certain threshold. Google doesn't say what the threshold is, but it just had to meet a certain threshold, and then we can do our data analytics.
That's great. Okay, so you shared with us so much about Google Analytics 4, and I'd just like to remind everybody on the call, if you have more questions for Ray, please just pop them in the Q&A. But so my question for you would be, this is kind of a big seismic shift. What are you most excited about with the move to Google Analytics 4 from Universal Analytics?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I think with the exploration reports, I think we can do a lot more customization work, like reporting. I think that's very unique within the analytics space. And I think most businesses find there's this like quite a steep learning curve, but once you know it, like these reports can provide a lot of information that we want to be able to do in universal analytics. And I think there's a lot more metrics and dimensions available in GA4 that weren't available in universal analytics. So that also helps businesses better understand their website performance. So that's kind of some of the things I'm most excited about. And I think GA4 is going to roll out more and more things. So when it first rolled out, not actually, it rolled out a while ago, a couple years ago, but I don't think it was people noticed it. But I think starting like last summer until now, Google Analytics has rolled out a lot more features and things have changed. And I think it's still kind of in the process of making the analytics tool better. So I think it's next year or 2 years or so, like I think Google GA4 will continue to add more new features that will help users better understand their website performance.
That's fantastic. Well, I have really learned a lot. I hope everyone on our call has too. I'm not seeing any more questions come through the chat. So before we wrap up, Ray, was there anything you wanted to leave our attendees with today?
I think we have one more question from Ryan.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we do. If someone's blocked cookies on their non-Google browser or uses an ad blocker on their browser, how limited is GA4? Great
Yeah,
question,
so
Ryan.
yeah, so I think right now like 20 to 30% of users have ad blocker. So Google says that they use machine learning to understand because GA4 basically it's like millions, hundreds of million users worldwide. So basically it's aggregating data across the world and then it's really trying to use machine learning to understand like user patterns. So I think that's their answer using machine learning to kind of fill in the gaps for ad blockers. So that's yeah, so I think that's kind of the what's happening right now. But again, that's what we mentioned that we're looking at trends, that's not specific values. So GA4 may show 10 users on a website for a specific time frame, but maybe there could be more. That's kind of how Google is trying to use it. And then Google also has Google Signals. So for example, when we log in our Google account, like I log in my Google account on my laptop, desktop, as well as my mobile device. that Google was able to determine when I log in, when I access a website and I don't have app blocker or anything, like Google is try to understand that this all these different visits is actually from the same user. So even with
Mm,
app blocker, I think Google can still kind of that's how they're trying to figure out like, okay, maybe there's an app blocker on a laptop, but there's no app blocker on your mobile device. So Google is still trying to piece the gap together. Maybe like, okay, they still kind of see, okay, even like this is a user who's been to your website and they're still trying to populate data in your GA4 property. So that's my answer. Like, yeah, I think this is a thing that many people are still trying to figure out. But again, I think it's not that bad in Canada. I think the cookie stuff, yeah, like for us, I think it's not like Canadian businesses. It's not like I don't think it's affected too much by the ad blocker, like the ones that we work
mm.
with, like so far, and I think it's still okay. And again, we're just looking at trends, not specific values.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Ray. And actually, you mentioned the cookie thing and international compliance with some of that, some of the EU companies. If
Mm.
somebody is running a Canadian business and maybe they're B2B within BC, so Niven, who's on our call today, with Express Employment, he's probably focusing mostly in British Columbia. Uh,
Mhm.
Maybe not too many users coming from the UK or other European countries. How important is it that a company like that have a disclaimer or a consent checkbox on their
Yeah.
landing page?
I don't think it's that critical because I actually went to City of Vancouver website very recently. So they just said that we use banner to to like improve our website for performance, and they just have a page of all the like their policy of like their data stuff. So I don't know, it's super like basically, but if you continue to visit the site knowing that they're tracking data, like you're giving consent. So I think that's
Mhm.
how they bypass this. Like I'm not a
So
lawyer.
it's
I'm
like
like,
having a sign up at an event that says you might be photographed and by
yeah,
attention.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's like if you yeah, like I mean we can have a banner like if you don't want to be tracked, like a person can leave the site, it's up to them. So if you continue that you're basically giving consent. And I've seen that for even like yeah, various like municipality websites or government properties. And I think they should know their legal stuff quite well. So I'm just kind of taking like yeah.
I
Uh,
like it. Yeah, let's take our cue from the public sector. And I have
yeah,
to
yeah.
say personally, I've found the internet became so much more annoying when that legislation came into force and to visit any website, you were required to check a bunch of boxes first.
Yeah, I think this kind of like private like data privacy stuff, it typically is from activists, like internet activists who are keep an eye on like I think like more corporate like bigger corporations to see they're following best practice. But I think a normal like an average person working 9 to 5 is not gonna, you know, take this too seriously. Like I don't take it too seriously. So yeah, I don't yeah. So I think within BC and Canada, I personally haven't really experienced any backlash, but like for websites that haven't used banners. Uh, so that's kind of my experience so far. But I think in EU is actually very, very strict. Like it's actually quite complex. Like there are some German and Swedish really smart like data analytics people, and then they teach a lot like about data and like Google Analytics and data analytics specifically in the EU and how you had to track like those like how you would set up those banners and stuff like that. So I heard like I think I read in like I think Austria, I think they don't allow any like American and like any Facebook pixel, any pixel, like any business in Austria, or they're not allowed to use any American pixels.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, we'll keep an eye on any legislation in Canada, if it ever comes down in the future. But
Yeah.
so Ray, as we wrap up, did you have any other closing thoughts before I give our final remarks?
I mean, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for Shana and Elena, everybody for having me here today. And then yeah, any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out. And yeah, and I'm here. So yeah, please feel free to get in touch.
Well, thank you so much. I know you're joining us from Calgary today because you are at an industry conference right now.
Yeah.
So thank you for taking time away. from your conference to join us. I hope everybody on the call today, all of our guests, has learned something. I know I certainly have. As I mentioned in the chat, this session is being recorded for our webinar library. So we encourage you to visit that after today's event. And I'd like to remind you of some other great upcoming events we have in the works. So June 20th, which is next Thursday, we have our Women in Leadership Lunch Series for June. That is at O'Hare's Gastro Pub and Liquor Store, an opportunity for women at various stages of their career, women and those who identify as gender non-binary or gender diverse, to engage and talk about some of the big issues with gender parity, but also enjoy a very intimate and relaxed networking experience. On June 25th, we have two fantastic networking experiences for you. Our Strictly Networking Dim Sum in the morning from 10 a.m. to 12:30. Very structured networking event with casual networking following over some dim sum snacks. Great event to go to if you're looking to expand your network very quickly. And then that evening on June 25th, we have a very casual networking event, Business After 5 at Canadian Western Bank on number 3 Road. That's going to be a lot of fun. Then the following day, we have another Lunch and Learn webinar, Basics of Exporting for Entry-Level Exporters from Export Navigator. So if you are a business with a product or service that you think might be ready to go interprovincial or to other jurisdictions, other countries, this is a great session for you to be a part of. We are partnering with Export Navigator for the months of May and June, and they have some great free one-on-one support services that can help your business grow beyond British Columbia. So I'd like to thank you all again for joining us today. I hope you have a great afternoon ahead and really appreciate you. Can't wait to see you in the coming month. Thank you.
Thank you, Shana. Bye, everybody.